talk Texas. Let's talk Texas. Let's talk Texas. All right? Y'all want to talk about Texas? Let's get into Texas. Texas recently was basically struck down by the Supreme Court, and that the Supreme Court ruled that Texas can't protect its own borders. They had to let the Biden administration's border protection come in and determine what's going to happen with migrants, even though it directly affects Texas residents and what's happening within that particular state. And so Texas started to take steps into their own hands. Not only were they sending planes, trains, and automobiles up to Chicago, New York, and Denver, LA, Atlanta. Not only was they sending migrants up there, they said, we want y'all to share in what we got going on. Greg Abbott said, look, we going to protect our border since y'all don't want to give us the funding in order to continue to build border walls. And so they started installing razor wire. They started putting buoys and floaties inside of the waters and the rivers to keep people from getting in, because they got a lot of acreage to cover, and making sure that they protect their own borders and protect their residents. That's the number one goal for this particular administration, is make sure they do what's best for the state. Make sure they do what's best for the people. Make sure that they look out for the people that's with them. All right? That's the number one thing. And you know what the Supreme Court did? They came through and they said, nah, listen, this is the Biden administration's job. They can remove the razor wire, and you need to get out the way so that, we can let the feds do what they do. And you know what Texas said? We gonna install more razor wire. Shout out to Texas. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm. Let's get it popping.
Texas lawmakers are outraged over a Supreme Court ruling allowing the federal government to remove all that razor wire along the U.S.-Mexico border. Texas Republican Congressman Chip Roy and others now pushing Governor Greg Abbott's administration to disregard the ruling and install even more razor wire. Jorge Ventura is live for us in Eagle Pass, Texas, with the latest. Jorge.
First of all, can we get a round of applause for Greg Abbott? Is Greg Abbott not the toughest, roughest with his afro puffs and his wheelchair? Listen, it take a man that ain't even standing up to stand up to the man that we need to stand up to. It take a man that ain't even standing up to stand up to the man that we need to stand up to. He ain't even standing up. He rolling through like Magneto. And said, listen, I see you. I heard what you said, but it's a little bit different over here in Texas. We move a little differently. We're going to go ahead and protect our own. He not playing no games. He got 0 F's to give. Shout out to my daycares and my churches. Greg Abbott got this many F's to give. This many. He said, we don't care nothing about what y'all talking about. We gonna do what we gonna do. That's what's best for the people.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Marky. Well, the Texas Military Department says they are holding the line and will continue their operations inside here in Shelby Park following that ruling from the Supreme Court that will allow Border Patrol agents to cut through that razor wire right here installed on the border. Now, our News Nation cameras captured Texas officials doubling down and installing new razor wire and anti-climb fencing. The Texas Military Department has seized control of Shelby Park and are not allowing Border Patrol agents to conduct their normal operations. In order for agents to cut through the razor wire here in Shelby Park, they'll need to be let in by Texas officials. So far, we have not seen that or any attempts from federal agents to enter the park. This all comes as Mexican officials across the river have stepped up efforts to stem the flow of migrants on their way to the U.S. border. Sources in Mexico telling News Nation that Mexican officials are conducting operations on freight trains to stop migrants from riding train cars all the way to the U.S. border. Texas Congressman Randy Weber is in Mexico discussing the issue of immigration with the Mexican president. He tells me he backs Texas Governor Greg Abbott's actions to install more razor wire.
Frankly, I think that Governor Abbott needs to tell the federal government to stay out of Texas, in my opinion, and that they're not protecting the border. They've done a lousy job. This administration has. They've not put the policies into effect that need to be there to deter people from coming in.
Man, I wish I can have me a Greg Abbott. We need Greg Abbott to run Michigan the same way. Lord bless Greg Abbott. I'm a sinner. He gonna just be a part of my daily prayers. Lord, bless wheelchair Abbott and continue to hold up his body and let him continue to run it up and take care of Texas and be the governor that we all know that we all need and deserve in all of our states. We all need an Abbott in our state. He said, listen, I heard what you said, but you're not coming over here and telling us what to do over here. You're not determining what we got going on over here. He said, we're going to install all of this razor wire and we're going to triple up. Try to get through it if you want to.
Today, we are expected to see the Texas military install even more of the razor wire here in Shelby Park, just adding to the layers and making it even more difficult for migrants to enter illegally. The sense on the ground right now is this is going to be a long-term operation as the border showdown between the federal government and the state of Texas intensifies.
Thanks for watching.
I'm a bet on Abbott. I'm betting on Abbott.
Border update new here at 6. Texas is doubling down on the concertina wire along the Rio Grande. Today, the Texas National Guard was spotted actually putting up more razor wire at Eagle Pass, one day after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the feds are able to remove the wire. Vanessa Croy has the latest from the border.
The temporary ruling is a big win for the Biden administration, but one day after the Supreme Court's order, the razor wire remains here in Eagle Pass, as Governor Abbott says the fight is not over. And we talked to one local businessman who's wondering, what about us? Fencing, razor wire, and other barriers still remain along the river near Shelby Park and Eagle Pass. The Governor Greg Abbott has installed as part of Operation Lone Star. This after the Supreme Court's decision on Monday to allow federal agents to remove the razor wire.
It doesn't change operations for DPS or National Guard. We're still going to add more infrastructure. That decision does not say that we have to remove barriers. In fact, we're adding more barriers.
The emergency appeal granted by the nation's highest court reverses a ruling by a lower court that barred federal agents from cutting the wire.
And they're adding this other barrier here. That way.
The Biden administration arguing the razor wire prevents Border Patrol agents from doing their job. It's a dispute that spans from D.C. to Texas, as Governor Abbott continues to slam the Biden administration for not enforcing immigration laws.
We're averaging a drowning a day here, but yet at the federal level, from the federal government, they have not put any type of preventive measures in place to discourage anyone from crossing the river.
But what about the local? What about us?
For Eagle Pass business owner Jesse Fuentes, the impact extends much deeper than just political rhetoric.
Shelby Park connects us to the river. It is part of our culture. It is part of our history.
Fuentes operates Epi's canoe and kayak team. And with the state takeover of Shelby Park, it's not only impacting his business, but also his livelihood.
We have no access to it. There's tons and tons of concertina. There's shipping containers.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton.
Yeah, that's it don't matter. Listen, we're not worried about your canoeing business, buddy. We got to secure our borders. If you want different, then you need to get the Biden administration to get your life to get their life together. Listen, if y'all want different, then go and talk to Biden. That's what the message is from Texas. If y'all want different, then y'all need to go and talk to Biden. Meanwhile,
a day after the Supreme Court allowed federal authorities permission to remove razor wire installed by Texas along the border, North Texas Congressman Roger Williams is now announcing a new proposed bill. He says it would bolster Texas' efforts to combat unprecedented levels of illegal immigration at our southern border. U.S. Congressman Roger Williams joined local law enforcement officials in Tarrant County this morning to discuss the ongoing effects of the border crisis throughout Texas communities. He also took the time to unveil key details of new legislation he's hoping to get passed.
This legislation gives Texas the authority to secure our borders and protect the lives of Texans.
The state of
it's unfortunate that you got to introduce new legislation to give yourself authority to secure your borders, because the federal government, which is supposed to serve you, that takes tax dollars from the residents in your state, won't even do its job. You got to introduce legislation to take care of your own borders.
Texas Operational Protections Act, or the STOP Act, being introduced by Congressman Williams, would affirm Texas' right to secure its border. It would allow for more sections of a border wall to be built, and in his words, most importantly, force the federal government to reimburse the state for all of the expenses tied to this kind of enforcement.
I think the federal government, in this case, does owe it to the people, because the people of Texas, it's our money that's getting spent on the border. and we need to get our money back.
Currently, similar operations through Governor Abbott's Operation Lone Star have already cost taxpayers close to $10 billion.
Texas got to continue to do what they can.
And it's worth every dollar that's being spent.
From physical barriers to changing laws, what state laws and so forth is the only thing we can do.
But opposition to his proposed bill has been swift. The chairman of the Texas Border Coalition tells us this legislation does little to solve the problem.
Continuing with just deterrence only and enforcement only policies is not going to bring any resolution.
He thinks the solution is a combination of a physical enforcement with complete comprehensive immigration reform from Washington.
If we're going to continue to try to do things through deterrence, we have to complement it with an overall border management program that includes immigration reforms and legal pathways for folks to come in.
You can forget it, man. Listen, you can forget about all of that because I'm going to just tell you this right here. We've been talking about immigration reform and closing off our borders and securing our walls and making sure that national security is at the forefront of what we need to do, because you can't really help and take care of the people in the United States of America if you can't even secure your own borders. Since I've been born, since I was a little kid, and I was born in '82, I'm 41 years old. Since I was a little kid, I have been hearing this same rhetoric over and over and over and over and over again. We continue to talk and we're not doing nothing. And it hasn't been until I just seen what's going on with Governor Greg Abbott that I've seen anybody step up and say, listen, I don't know what we got to do. We can jerry rig this. We can put this razor up. We can do whatever it is that we need to do. But at the end of the day, we need to go ahead and make sure that we secure our borders, at least over in Texas. And if anybody else disagree with it, then we're going to send some migrants up to your city. And whatever we got to do, we just going to run it up. Whatever it's going to cost, that's the investment that we're willing to make. I haven't seen anybody except for Greg Abbott, not one person actually, and Trump. Let me give Trump his credit, because he was one of the people that, as a part of his campaign for and asked for federal dollars to continue to secure our borders. Now, we spending the money on it anyway, but we just putting makeshift things in place. We're not actually solving for the problem. And nobody is against immigration, but we're against illegal immigration. Shout out to Texas. I got a lot of respect and a lot of love for Texas, especially Dallas. I love Dallas. Shout out to Dallas, Texas.